that.
Steve, I was just we're talking about you. So,
yeah, we were just doing, Freddie, we were just doing a whole preamble of everybody's memories of you going back to Wild Style and Yo MT Raps, and then even bringing it up to date when we saw you at the marijuana rally a couple of years ago when you were
Yes, I was actually
trainer, right?
Yeah, I shot that for my film. Unfortunately, that didn't make it in, but I had great footage that day. That was inspirational.
That was the date I think Fab.
That's when I got the papers. You sponsored it, and I was like, these curved papers were so great. And then a mutual friend connected us, and you gave me some. Love those curved papers.
So Freddie, I was trying to kind of get an idea here. You know, where did you come up with the idea? I mean, how did you decide to make that movie?
Well, you know, in the way that great ideas sometimes happen, I was having a conversation with a really good friend that I'm about to go into business with. It's a really interesting story. So this is a guy, it's a black guy, brother from California that had been in the legacy game up and down California, from Humboldt all through the hood, got caught up in the system, was in the system in and out, but still was like, man, as you know, one of the unfortunate things is people that have been these legacy cannabis purveyors and dealers oftentimes have been criminalized in prison, especially people of color. So anyway, we were talking one day about 4 years ago, and he was like, I figured it out. I'm gonna start a consultancy business. I'm gonna call it 40 Acres and a Greenhouse, because he couldn't touch the plant, having been in the criminal justice system. But he could be a consultant to advise these people coming in on all the processes, what strains, how to do it, how to, you know, maximize what it was doing. And in that conversation, the 40 acres was a reference to Black folks having been promised 40 acres and a mule during Reconstruction after slavery, which did happen for a hot minute. So that's why Spike Lee called his film company 40 Acres. It's a reference to the fact that Black folks, after having been enslaved, were denied the ability to take part or to grow, have some land to make things happen for themselves. And so he was going to get that 40 acres in the cannabis space, which was the whole thing. And that conversation sparked the whole idea. I just was like, wait a minute, you know, Black folks with jazz, we've been at the front of this since the beginnings of jazz, which which you'll see in the movie, if you guys haven't seen it, that I learned from my dad, who was a jazz head, and that went back further than I knew. And, you know, if you're a High Times person that's been plugged in, then you know chunks of this history. But then I realized the hip hop people I had introduced to the audience when I was doing the MTV thing, and they were big proponents of the plant, Snoop, Cypress Hill, and damn near everybody else. So that's really was the genesis of the idea. And it was a conversation with a friend. Even the title of the film, Grass is Greener, all happened in this fun conversation, while of course I was hitting something really good and really green and some really great flower. And this whole movie sprung from that. And it was a pretty fun thing to tell the story, which you're gonna see, which is a little bit of a snapshot of where I come from, how I come up, and this story of the plant that connects, joined at the hip, with America's music, jazz. As it grew and was created, so did this plant get spread around. And the fact that particularly the fact that it brought Black folks and white folks and anybody together to celebrate, and share this plant, that's what led to this plant being criminalized. And it's a sad nightmare reality that something so beneficial and helpful has gone through this. And so that was I learned way more. That was the fun thing about making a doc, is I learned a hell of a lot that I was able to share with, you know, with a lot of people, with important guys.
Can you give us a little insight on what it takes to sell a cannabis project to Netflix?
Wow. Well, yeah. You know, like, well, the process is you get your story together. We did a deck that illustrated like this story with some visuals from Louis Armstrong and Cab Calloway, and this story, images of like key things that we were going to touch on. And following the music, we went from jazz to reggae to hip hop, of course, touching on the counterculture in general. And so you have a good deck and a pitch. And it was me, I got together with a producer that had did some things. He had directed and, you know, worked at Vice, this gentleman, Vikram, and then people knew some things I had did, and we got a meeting, and you get a meeting. But we pitched to about 6 or 7 different networks and channels, hoping to see who was gonna really give us a shot. I had 2 pitch decks, by the way, too. I had one which was a feature length, and another deck that shown how we can break this down into a 4 to 6 part series, because I could have expanded on each significant area of the film. I could have went really just expanded on the jazz, on the reggae, on the beat generation, how the 60s counterculture that follows the beatnik, Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac era, how those were the first guys to really appreciate the plant as they connected with jazz and that sensibility. And then that springs into the hippie thing, which puts it on full blast, thanks to Ginsberg, and makes it a national issue somewhat. And so, yeah, that was really what you do. You pitch, and basically we got some responses here, there, but Netflix came back the most with the best offer, and the platform was just really, you know, beneficial, I think. Yeah.
Was there any follow-up to you, you know, now that you're a filmmaker, you know, to do some more film work?
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of people don't know, through all the different things, you know, making visual art is first and foremost, but then filmmaking fits right along with that. So I directed during that Yo MTV Raps period, I directed over 60 like music videos, which was sort of film school for me, along with working with Charlie making Wild Style, you know. So I did the first videos for KRS-One, My Philosophy, Snoop Dogg, you know, Queen Latifah. I directed a lot of stuff. So that was film school. This was my first long form project, and I've got other projects coming. And I also want to share with you, like, that one of the things that once again grew out of making this film and learning so much more, I'm developing a cannabis product, a brand, in support of one of the gentlemen that you're going to see in this movie. The man's name in the film is Bernard Noble, and the brand is coming really soon, and we're working with a really big cannabis company, but we were able to get a very equitable deal, and the part of the brand is to support him and to tell the story of other people that have been victimized by these unjust cannabis laws. So this man's name is a significant part of the narrative of this film. I was blessed to capture what I did, and I don't want to give it away, but you're going to see his whole story in terms of how it relates. And this cannabis brand is amazingly going to happen really soon. And the man's name is B Noble. The cannabis brand is, I'm sorry, I screwed it up. His name is Bernard Noble. The brand is B Noble. Boom.
I love it. So, you know, it sounds like every one of these prisoners who've been getting out lately should have their own strain.
Well, that's a great way to kind of fix this injustice and rape. I've heard a few other people, it's the right thing to do, to kind of, once again, help people and also educate people that we have these mass injustices still ongoing right now, while other people are prepared to make like an incredible green rush literally is about to really kick in. We were aware of that term when we were making the movie, the green rush, but now that we've got a new administration and people really need the money, and it's helped so many people get through this pandemic, just cooling your nerves and just easing some of this pressure, it's going to explode. So it's great to let people that have been victimized and just so systematically shut out be able to participate, and for us to support that in enjoying this flower.
Hey, I'm having a little echo. Anybody else want to ask the question?
Yeah, I'll ask the question and be echoey.
We're all getting echo?
Yeah.
Good, it's good over here on my end.
All right.
All right,
Well,
so my question is Fab Five Freddy, could you talk a little bit about your patient experience.
About my what experience?
Patient.
Meaning,
How cannabis is helping your health right now.
Oh, my health. Oh, my patients. Okay. Yeah, like, well, you know, I've been a long time cannabis enthusiast, you know, aficionado, whatever. It's just a part of my daily, you know what I mean? Like I take my vitamins and I drink my water, you know, and eat healthy foods, you know. I take care of my endocannabinoid system with, you know, the finest that I can get. And it was great working on the film. I got to meet, you know, you'll see some of those guys in the movie, some really talented and some really great growers, you know, Jesse Horton, Sid from Pistol Point. These guys have become friends and they're amazing growers. And I got to see their facilities. You're going to see it in the film and talk to them. And, you know, once again, the purpose of my film, like, was primarily to focus on folks of color and the different issues that are disproportionately affected. And then to look at the musical connections while also looking at the criminal misjustice that's been forced on too many people for this harmless flower. So, yeah.
All right, so I'll try to get another question that I'll ask slowly because of the echo. In the last couple of years that you've been working in this community, the cannabis community, diversity and equity have become really the most important things. You know, to do the right thing and help everybody to be part of this community. Don't leave anybody out. Do you see improvement happening?
Absolutely. You know, there's an app that I'm a part of. I've been a part of this app since the summer when it really began, called Clubhouse, right? And this is the most unique social media app because literally it's people having conversations, just like we're doing now. It's just audio. And the remarkable thing that I've been a part of so many times, particularly in many cannabis rooms that form on Clubhouse, I'm also a crypto enthusiast and a lot of other areas that I'm interested in, amazing groups of people forming, just having these conversations like this and interacting, sharing info, connecting with these people offline. So I've met lots of other people in the cannabis community from the legacy game that we're now connecting with and kind of forming a bond, like Sherbinsky, the legendary Sherbinsky with the Sherbert strains is a legacy cat that's figured out how to do it. And we're talking and looking to come together with other people. So it's like a legacy coalition that has come together. So I'm seeing things like this form, like, you know, in the way that they do, but this app has aided that. And you know, what's my man's name? Al Harrington with his brand, Viola. We've all met on these apps, people from all over the country that are legacy, people from the legacy, a lot of people of color, men, women, diverse crowds. It's amazing. All talking like we're right in this room about how to make it better and that they're figuring it out.
Hey, Ice Cube just jumped in, Method Man. Right?
Yeah, so I just hope that they jump in the way that they really get involved and not just do like a superficial, because obviously the thing that's unique that I'm seeing in this, as it now will begin to wrap up into another accelerated phase, is I see a lot of comparisons to hip hop music. Once again, it was inevitable. And, you know, when Steve Hager was at, you know, when you guys at High Times and whatever, he was the first to put hip hop people on the cover, that was during the period I'm hosting Young TV Raps. I mean, Snoop a bunch of times, Method Man, Redman, Be Real. It was like a perfect synergy. There we go. Right? That's one of the things. You're going to see that in the movie. You're going to see that issue. We got Steve to pull out a bunch of issues and it just connected. This
is a plaque. This is a plaque.
Wow.
Right? No, I see. But we got the images of that. And I'm seeing that the brands for me, and Burner from the Cookies brand is in the movie. I learned about him in the process and now built friendships with these guys because it's like hip hop. The same kind of marketing acumen that I think are going to create the brands that are really going to resonate. The people that are connected to this culture from the streets are going to have I think a leg up because it's so similar. And if you hustled the way rappers talk about hustling relentlessly, this is now the time to basically hustle legit if you can figure this thing out. And there's a lot of hurdles still in place, but that's what I see happening. And the expertise, just like those major labels, they weren't able to sell this music because they was on some bullshit, basically. But then heads like stepped up, like, let us do this, give us this deal. You know, they may not have made all the right deals, but that's when the music began to connect with the people in the culture in a sincere, unique way. So I think it's inevitable, because I think it's going to be hard to really fool and fake the funk when you just some corporate that don't have the flavor to really sincerely connect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it won't hold on.
You know, you're making a lot of news here. I'm about to take this and put it on Celeb Stoner. Any other questions?
So I just want to say, I just quickly wanted to say, appreciate you, Fab Five Freddy. And
Thank you.
I grew up in the hip hop culture in New York, born and raised in New York. And, you know, I was very thankful to see you bring in these very important music and cultural elements and tell part of the story that hasn't been told on documentary yet.
Thank
And
you.
I really felt you've added to that. And I just wanted to hip you. I'm an old friend, like good friend of Sibba Jibba's. You know, we came up together.
My man, yeah.
We came. Me and Sibba Jibba and I went to see my first hip hop show. I went to see Sibba when I was 11 years old at the Beacon with UTFO and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and all that. But we're making a stage show about the history of cannabis, a music theater piece, and we're opening it in a year in New York. And I think there could be some nice synergy, and I'd love to talk to you more. So I'll reach out. I want to be in touch.
Yo, how are you doing this on your screen? This is amazing. With the,
you know, we can build on that. I mean, we can do all kinds of things. It's you know, we can travel to different places and different things can happen.
Oh,
But
I gotta, you gotta hit me to, yo, is that green screen?
Yeah, I got a green screen behind me. Exactly.
I'm gonna need to step my game up. That's incredible, right?
Yeah, well, we're making a full multimedia immersive stage show about the, you know, covering a lot of the same material. We've got songs about, you know, Louis Armstrong, but we're also honoring different activists, and we want to produce a whole festival next year. We'd love to screen the film and, you know, talk more about that. But thank you for your contribution and all that you've been contributing to the culture. Yeah.
Thank you, man. This is dope, man. Yeah, appreciate it.
The book that your show is based on.
Our book is inspired by Smoke Signals by an author named Martin Lee. It's a great document. Martin Lee is a family friend, someone I came up with. And he wrote a book called Acid Dreams about the history of acid, which he interviewed my dad for, because my dad was in a company called the Living Theater, a very radical theater company. And so, you know, that book, you know, ties a lot of those same threads, you know, that you're exploring, and it's the stories that need to be told.
What was the other book? The Smoke Signals
and Acid Dreams.
Acid Dreams. Making a note.
Martin A. Lee.
Martin A. Lee. And he runs Project CBD. And I don't know if people have heard, but Martin's got a new book coming out about CBD, which is actually going to be out on Reader's Digest, if you can imagine it.
Good.
Coming out in a couple of months. So keep an eye out for that. A comprehensive book on CBD.
Martin's a great writer, great guy.
Yeah, wonderful cat. But thank you, Fab, and we'll look forward to building.
Thank you, man. This has been amazing. This is dope. Flyer Zoom image. You are killing it right now. This is so crazy. I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
It's a light show. Anybody else have any questions?
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure. Go.
Fab, my name's Grant Smith Ellis. I'm the president of MassCan up in Massachusetts.
Hey.
We've had this whole nice to meet you. We do the Freedom Rally every year if you ever catch us up in September.
Well, hopefully, as soon as we get out of this, I'd love to get up. You know, I'm in a big exhibit at the Boston MFA, Finding the Future, Basquiat and the Hip Hop Generation. It's a group show of all of us that made paintings then. It's up at the Boston MFA, so please check it out. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I will, that's awesome. So I guess I kind of wanted to ask about CD Party at first, actually.
Oh, please.
But,
yes.
But I also want to ask about Homegrown, so I'll tie it together.
Okay.
So how do you see the emergence of radical, organic, grassroots content in the digital age? And especially, how do you see it functioning to win things like home grow rights or social equity protections and anything like that?
Wow, homegrown rights means that's like an issue that I should know more about. So I get that, and definitely people should be able to freely. And the second part is about TV Party.
Yeah, like,
Well, you know, it's interesting. What I'm a somewhat gamer, not really good at it, but I'm just fascinated with gaming and that aspect of technology. And so the Twitch, I was hip to Twitch when it first hit 4 or 5 years ago. And then during the pandemic, I've leaned back into Twitch, which has really blown my mind that they've added all these kind of like live channels. And it reminds me of public access, which in New York City, in the kind of earlier days of cable, when I first kind of plugged in to people in the scene in New York, it was particularly guys like my mentor, Glenn O'Brien, who sadly passed a couple years ago. He had a public access show, which was the place where I was able to connect with Blondie and all the people from the downtown New York New Wave scene. At that time, I had these ideas about being an artist, about this graffiti thing being looked at in a different way. None of this stuff had happened. This all leads to what we know of as street art and this whole big thing now, which I'm so proud of. So those people like mentored me. That was my intro into meeting everybody, being a part of the scene, this super ultra low budget public access cable TV show, which was so old and antiquated at that time that it was literally black and white cameras, video cameras, and broadcast in black and white. This started late 70s when I just met them, and then it went for a few years. So Glenn O'Brien's TV Party, you can go on YouTube and see a few clips of it. And that was like the beginning of everything for me. You know, controlling being the cameraman and a regular guest, and just making relationships with all these cool downtown counterculture, new wave people that embraced me and helped plug me into the things that I would do. Like the ideas to do Wild Style, and, you know, Jean-Michel Basquiat, he would come and hang out. We and him became tight through that, and many other people.
And Keith Haring used to come and hang
No,
out.
Keith didn't come to TV Party, but Keith, like, we would meet later and become tight in that same time frame. But TV Party was all the new wave. Like Keith and them hadn't, like, that was it. But all in that literally a short period of time where a whole lot happened. Remarkably, but TV Party was the nucleus of my everything for me in the beginning of it all.
New York City.
thank you, Fab.
Yeah, so thanks for asking that question. There was a documentary done on TV Party, which is pretty cool. Like so many things end up on Amazon. It might be there, but there was a doc about 10 or 15 or so years ago done on TV Party. Glenn O'Brien's TV Party, where you interviews with all the people and clips of this really ultra low budget show where all these ultra creatives on that downtown New York scene
Hey,
were all there on the show.
Any thoughts on Ricky Powell?
Oh man, wow, my boy, super sad to lose Rickster, the lazy hustler, Ricky Powell, man. Yeah, and yeah, that was sad. And what made it even super poignant, there's an amazing documentary that was done on Ricky's life that will, hopefully Tribeca will be opening up that people can go and see films, but it'll be a part of Tribeca. And Ricky the film was finished about a year ago, but you know, COVID shut everything down. And Ricky in the fall had sent me a link. And sadly, I didn't get to watch that link until the day I got the word that he passed away. And the film is so epic. I mean, one of the most real New York character portraits you'll ever see, because Ricky let it all hang out in this film. I don't know how well you might have known him, if you did, but you know, Ricky was one of my weed guys, up until not that long ago. You know, he always had his sack. I could slide by to see Ricky. Yeah, he always was. This became a signature pose of his. You'd go on Instagram and check Ricky Powell's page. He'd always pose like that, which was holding a joint. And he was a good dude, grew up in the West Village, loved culture, every aspect of New York when it was that old New York. He never, he stayed in that zone of like a real diverse, interesting, richly textured New York. He lived in this one room, and this doc, it's all there. You see it all. And his photos, he was a sidekick photographer for the Beastie Boys. And this capture, he captured early hip hop just when it exploded. Ricky was this cool guy that we all loved. That wasn't really, we didn't see him as a photographer. He was a dude in the mix that would pull a camera out, take some pictures, and then go back to hanging. And it was really, great legacy. So Ricky Powell, that'll be coming up. Tribeca, which will be, I guess, sometime soon. So hopefully.
I knew you'd have some memories. You know, he kind of flowed through High Times at some point.
Yeah, no,
You know,
he was
remember
really,
meeting
really
him
close friends.
out at shows or up at the office a few different times. You know?
Come on.
Just
I
like
mean,
you come through, you know, people.
Yeah, I would love to come. You know, the legendary thing at High Times for those, this is like old cannabis culture. And it was so many for so long because Glenn O'Brien, as you probably know,
Right,
was an editor.
Before me in the mid 80s, right?
Wow, this is my real important High Times connection. So when I become cool with Glenn, TV Party, I've got these ideas. I want to be an artist and this whole music, and I'm trying to like bring this whole scene like to the table. And the first significant article about what we were doing as visual artists, myself, Lee Quinones, and Jean-Michel Basquiat, Glenn O'Brien wrote a big feature for High Times.
Right.
Mick Jagger was on the cover, but
the famous Mick Jagger cover.
Mick Jagger bears his breasts, but we were slated to have that cover. Lee had painted a giant double handball court mural that was going to be that cover image, and they had photographed it. But when Mick came in, that bumped us. So that was the beginning of us getting, and that was the other thing about Glenn. He was the first person to write about our work and to understand all this stuff that was spinning around in my head, as well as Jean-Michel, and write about us in a serious way.
So that what, Glenn connected you to Hager and High Times?
No, Hager came later. We met Hager because Hager was a daily news reporter, and I curated a show at the Mud Club that I was in with everybody that I'm talking about, but other kind of artists from the downtown scene that I felt. So the show was called Beyond Words, Graffiti Base, Rooted and Inspired Work. So that broadened the spectrum for like just people that did gritty shit, that just did poster. It was just a wild, raw show. The third floor of the Mud Club. And Steve Hager came to write about this for the Daily News. Of course, we weren't expecting the basic puff piece that it was. It was like a salute. It was also one of the first positive pieces. My mind was blown because mainstream press hated everything graffiti. There was no positive anything about any of this. So what happens is the story comes out. Next thing you know, I'm seeing Steve Hager hanging around on the scene a lot. He later tells me that he was fired. When that article came out, his editor didn't really, I guess the editor they didn't really edit that piece. And the piece slid by the editor. It was a total praise of like a big up of what we were doing. They fired him. So he becomes a part of the scene hanging out. Then I began to see him because I'm like, dude, you were this reporter. I wasn't expecting him to be cool, right? And next thing you know, he's down in the scene. He's at all the cool clubs. He's going to the parties. He's seeing what's beginning to happen. And then he writes the first book on hip hop, which always blows my mind. Like, it's called Hip Hop. And then he also writes the first book on the downtown East Village art scene, which was called Art After Midnight, which, you know, I'm in both of those books. So that's Steve Hager, who then becomes the editor of High Times. And then I think, was the Source magazine in the same building? Is that how it happened? Or in the same block? He says, yeah, I think in the film he says it, like the guys from the Source said, yeah.
I mean, not when I was there, but you know,
okay.
I mean, Hager was about 85, 86 High Times. I came in about 88, 89.
Right. Well,
my connection was John Holmstrom.
Okay, John Holmstrom, right.
He was my friend, and that's how I got in the door at High Times. John brought me in.
Right. Well, yeah, no, I was pretty.
Hager was editor at the time, and Holmstrom was managing editor.
Right.
Well, not managing editor, executive editor. There was another managing editor.
Yeah, nah. So that was That was so cool. High Times was the bomb. I remember, yeah, that was cool for me. I remember because of Glenn, who was writing and involved, I think he invented the title editor at large, which became something that many people use describing what he did at High Times. If I'm not mistaken, was that there or later at GQ he did that? He became editor at large. Yeah, when an interview as well. That's how I met him, through interview. His music column. So
hey, thanks for indulging us in this conversation, by the way.
Yeah, it's been fun.
How's it going? You know?
We're ready to watch a movie, I guess.
Okay, I mean, Freddie and I could go on and on. So you know, you tell us what you want to do, and we'll go with your flow, Michael.
Well, no, I want to thank
yeah,
again.
I'll watch a little bit of the movie and then I got to go, but it'll be fun. I'm so glad.
Why don't you set up the movie?
Well, basically, you know, once again, Grass is Greener. This was the documentary inspired by a conversation with my friend Ron, who's in the movie for a minute, talking about Branson. Branson almost is a modern day version of a guy from the jazz era called Mez Mesereau that you'll see. This was a white, super cool, loved by all jazz musician that
He was
also
Louis Armstrong's dealer.
Louis got cannabis from him, as well as many other greats. My dad, when I first discovered all this stuff, that all these jazz musicians were making these records, and played this record for my dad and his friends when I was a young kid. My dad, I was like, and what is this Mez thing? He was talking about all these things in these different records, and my dad and his friends had went up to Harlem to buy a loose joint from Mez when like they were youngins in the 30s or whatever. I was like, what? So I got to, you know, tell a little bit of his story. And then this guy, Branson, you'll see, and he was a guy that more than 70 rap records shouted him out as having the best cannabis through the 90s. So a whole host of who's who of rappers would all go and get cannabis. So I just tell that story. And I was just happy to be able to tell the movie and mix some music and some kind of some humor, interestingly, which is the thing that made me most nervous about this, along with some real sadness and some like horror that so many people have gone through. The thing, and this is where, and I must give props, her name is Nancy Novak. She was the editor, who was an activist at heart, which was the main reason why I hired her. I saw that activist thing in her. And I felt like she would tell this story in a way that is what you're going to see on screen. And she was able to mix these extreme emotions together in a way that blew my mind. That was my biggest fear, is how am I going to make this work? How am I going to go from serious emotion to Snoop Dogg just being amazingly funny and like candid? And I just couldn't believe the way Snoop gave it up for me in the most Snoop Dogg kind of way. So that was it. That's Grass is Greener. Like, enjoy the movie.
Thanks so much.
And and don't forget, Be Noble is coming soon.
All right.
Can't wait.
One amazing storyteller. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.